So I'm very happy to welcome Robertina today. Third time is the charm. Robertina is going to talk to us about her art-based research work, where she focuses primarily on the human footprint, especially with aquatic life. And I think from here on, please take it away, Robertina.
Thank you, Rüdiger, and thank you, Subnet team, to have me. I'm very happy to be also presenting. And yes, as Rüdiger said, third time is the charm, so it's happening now. So for today's presentation, I decided to speak more deep about the aquatic-based works which I research and work and think of, and as in working this kind of environments of aquatic research, I think it's very important to have also, as you saw through a few slides now, also to be part of the field, you know, to be in situ, to be in the with the feet, water, and the whole body in the water, and also to experience and understand the different environments which which I try to address also inside of my work, you know. So the slide which you see here is from one of my recent journeys, where for change, I was not in the place which it would be too much presence of the human pollution per se. I was at Galapagos, which is one of these biggest national reservoirs. And I have to say that recording audio there reminded me about why I even started to do these recordings with hydrophones in the waters, because there I could actually hear the fish. I could actually hear the really beautiful, vivid, and different sounding atmospheres of the oceans and seas. Because otherwise, and I will also speak today instead of the talk about it, is the problematic which I'm dealing with is what you also see on this slide. This is a photo from boats, mostly cargo ships waiting to enter the port of Singapore, but there is many ports like this around the world, because the thing which can be sometimes a bit forgotten and not taking in account is this, that most of the goods and everything what we intake, eat, have on ourselves, use on daily basis was transported in one moment with some of this cargo ship from point A to B. So this is something which is kind of resonating always with me, and this kind of boats are also leaving the imprints in the oceans and seas through the sound, through different chemical presence with pollution and so on. So there's lots of different topics to talk about. One of the first projects which I was like kind of entering in these kind of aquatic environments was Project Aurelia 1+ Hertz, where I was working with scientists from Marine Station in Izmir in Turkey. And I had like amazing, and I still have this amazing support by one of the scientists from Slovenia, who is like also expert on plankton and jellyfish, Dr. Alenka Malej. So this combo was helping me to develop the frame of the work of the works of Aurelia. And the works, they are kind of, you know, I see them now through this distance also with a decade now, since almost a decade since they have been made, that they kind of framed me also the way how I started to think and how I wanted to approach with aquatic environments. So the works are two. There is like Aurelia 1+ Hertz protovidal generator, and the second part was the performance where me and jellyfish we are performing together for the public. When I say together, I'm of course aware that jellyfish are still in the tanks, and yes, they are moving and the tanks are around, because this is the tanks which are the best for the well-being of jellyfish in the captivity. And I'm aware of all these kind of different factors, but still, as I also like to claim through the citat from Paul Celan, there's still songs to sing beyond mankind. With this kind of presentation and presence of other species with me on the stage, I think still I bring this distance, like distant aquatic creatures, which we don't know so well. They're really different than us. Their bodies are different. The presence is different. And I really want to bring this near to the how to observe them, how to see them, and how to even understand what they do. So I will play, but just for quickly and shortly.
Aurelia 1 Plus Hertz is looking into
part of the videos, just that you get the idea also, because I think something is like when I speak about the piece and another thing, so I'm jumping in the video. So this is the recordings from Izmir in Turkey, where it was like really like thousands and thousands of jellyfish. And this was also helping me to work with them in the real material way of being with them in the ocean and sea, and then transforming them into this kind of installation. So this installation, which you see now, their jellyfish are moving around, and depending how they're moving, we did programming together with my bigger team, with Slavko Glamočanin and Scenart and so on, that depending how the jellyfish are moving, the soft robotic sculpture is also moving. So the human is kind of not doing the interaction. The interaction happens just between the species. And this is the second part of the project where me and jellyfish, we are performing on the stage, and the performance is very meditative, it's very repetitive, and also it gives possibility to species just be there, be present, and give its presence into the space, you know. The second project is talking more directly about the problematic we just started to enter before, and it's about underwater noise pollution. This is something which was quite striking to me when I was the first or second time when I started to do hydrophone recordings. And instead of like hearing all these kind of different species and sounds of the nature or ambience of the nature, because ocean is quite a vivid space, I mostly heard just us, you know, humans with our boats or different kind of technical devices, which they're very present in these places. So I started to frame this kind of work, which is called aquatocene, and it speaks and talks about this kind of aquatic pollutants. I think that it's very important to be aware of why the sound is so important to be present in the oceans and seas, and why our presence is so disturbing, because the physicality of water and the air is very different. So in the air, the sound travels differently than in the waters. In the waters, it travels 5 to 7 times deeper and longer. And also what I try to say is also like this, humans, we are very visual animals. And in oceans and sea, these changes, the creatures living there, they are mostly depending on the smell. They're depending on like touch and on the sound. Because very quickly, as you see on this map, very quickly, you're in the twilight zone and in the very strong dark zone. So this is like one of the things, you know, the sound is actually the main sensory perception, especially for communication and for traveling in the oceans and seas. And yeah, this slide just speaks again about this human presence through different technical devices. And the scary thing, which I'm reading lately a lot about it, and also trying to follow up to understand what the plans are, is also to understand what is happening on the level of deep sea mining, which starts to be new thriving industry after the deep sea fishing also and so on. So because, you know, deeper in the oceans we go, yes, there's other lives, there's a lot of possibilities, but there's also lots of problems coming with that up, and we can debate them later in our debate round. The sound, and speaking about sound, I think it can be sometimes abstract. So I will play, but just for a few moments, and I will jump around the slide if you don't mind. But just to give you some of ideas. Like what we hear now are actually shrimps, and they're very present in the oceans and seas. They can be quite loud also, and very present, but just to jump further, what we hear and what is the thing how we are present. So what I try to bring with this kind of glimpses of the sounds which I'm playing now is just to give you an idea how very anxiety filled up the sea can start to be with our presence. The aquatocene, I was like working for years, and it's kind of like a platform also sometimes. So during Corona, I was also exhibiting this as a sound piece in Ostend in Belgium, where they have been also next to the exhibition, the Gluon, the organization which invited me. They also worked with the national newspaper, and they did in the newspaper, the journalists did also bigger research, not only about my artwork, but per se, my artwork was part of her whole document about this kind of problematics, which is opening up because North Sea, yes, there is lots of windmills, which they're good for renewable energy, but they're quite noisy being present and built up there in this kind of environments. Working in the field of art science, many times I do knock on the doors of the scientists, and I'm always happy when it happens also vice versa. So this is one of these examples, like Mao Chen Wang and Karshon Qian, they found my article on aquatocene online, and they asked me if they can use it for their scientific paper for inspiration, which I was really glad. And I'm happy that, and there is more and more of this kind of interaction also happening. So as I think it's very important for art science field to not just be always just coming from the field of arts, but it's also coming from these other ways, you know, because I think collaboration should always be a bit more circular, never just like from one direction into another. One of the works which I will also speak, and I think it can open interesting discussion, is also the chemical pollutants in the oceans and seas, especially with focus on pharmaceuticals. And this is a project Aquaforensic, which was developed in residence at Ars Electronica. In first research was done in the river of Donau, and the second also in the Adriatic Sea in Dubrovnik, because where my colleague Gino, who is here next to me on many of photos, developed his own, he has like his own citizen science laboratory where he's organizing many workshops, he's organizing summer schools and different DIY and do it with other activities. And this kind of laboratories I like to work also because, you know, he has like amazing possibilities to do the in vitro experimentations, and with that I could we could see what is happening also, for instance, on this topic which we have been interested, what is happening with the pharmaceutical in the waters and oceans, because by the pills, depending of course which one it is, and our bodies are a bit different, but mostly 80% of the pills goes out of our body when we take them. They're going into the dark waters and through this into the whole system, and it's really hard to filtrate them. So that's why also there is quite interesting to see. So the thing what we notice when we have been doing these experiments is like you see here on the photos, it's like many microorganisms exposed to this, they diluted and disintegrated, which means that they die. And how we show the project is actually the book of the dead, we call it, because we are showing we have been both interested in the behavior changes of microorganisms, but then we saw also that these behavior changes, they went beyond just the changes in the behaviors, but also they really actually just diluted. So the work, how we are showing it in the exhibition, is actually this kind of like modular structure where these videos from the experiments, they constantly repeated loop, presented as micro holograms, which they are like constantly reviving and dying. So it's going into these ways. I will jump this one and I will upload. This is like one of the variation of this past artwork. Aquaforensic was built into the new variation, which was shown also this year during Ars. And we went more into research and see what is happening with the sea urchins and how they are actually, when they are exposed to the different environmental changes. And this is like just like snapshots from this kind of research work, because many times when I show only the final product, I sometimes think that it's like unknown how many hours of work and research is also needed for some works to be done. And yeah, with just to finish up this, because I try to be short, around 20-30 minutes we set to speak, and then we can actually debate some of the topics. I like to finish up with this work, which is actually work which I developed during the Corona time. And as all, we have been all also quite very locally based. And I started to do research on the river Ljubljanica, which is the river which has like 7 names, because it appears and disappears and appears and disappears in Kars area, which is like full of calcite. So for me, it was also interesting just to, and I will start to play this video as a flow, as I mentioned before. The piece is actually also audio, where the audio is the recordings of the river, but mixed with AI sound of mixture and the research of the sonic levels, which I did with expert for AI noises, with whom we have been looking into representation of the aquatic environments, not just like in typical ways, but we have been playing with the text humans have been reading, and we have been then we have been like doing almost like a deep fake, like copy pasting the sound of the human into the sound of the bird, sound of the water, and especially different environments. So I will just leave this playing very slowly behind me. I don't know if it's hard to listen to me and the water, or it's possible.
It's okay. It's better. Maybe just leave the water running or talk. I think both at the same time is confusing.
It's a bit too much, huh? It will be easy.
It's a bit too much. Both lose.
Okay. So no worries. I will just leave then the video, just that we can float together a bit. And yeah, so this is like, so I just wanted to show slowly and surely how differently the representation and thinking of aquatic environments can happen. And there is so many different problems which they're constantly present to speak about that, because many times people ask me if I still want to work in this, why do I still work with aquatic environments? And I'm saying that there is so many different topics to approach that, you know, it's not that I don't feel that it's like just like one field, it's many different fields which they're interconnecting also in that. So yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. What happened? Okay, no, it's back. Sorry. So do you want to play the video for a little bit?
Yeah, it can play with us, or, you know, do you want to listen, or if you have some questions in between already, or if somebody wants to ask something, I'm also happy to
I have a few questions, but I think I would like to let the media play for like 3 to 5 minutes, and then we go into questions, okay?
Okay, good.
This is gonna be fast, and this
So put it on
Very good.
silent bit. But just, you know,
I think we're gonna put those videos on. If you, are those videos on YouTube? Yeah, they are.
I can send you
then,
the links. They're on Vimeo. They're on Vimeo, and I can send you the whole script that I'm talking now, because anyway I prepared special for this talk, so I'm happy to share all this with you guys.
perfect.
That would be great. Thank you.
So, may I start with the questions?
Of course.
I have quite a few questions.
Okay.
So first of all, I would like to know the video you just showed us. It has a really nice feel to it. So do you how do you present it? Do you present it as a just a singular projection, or do you present it as like a room projection, like a surround projection?
So that's a good question, and here I will show you some examples. Because the work was actually first time that it was shown. Sorry, I'm just
This is very meditative.
Yeah.
If you
it has these different layers to it, because the work was done in Corona. Instead of just audio concept of a river, started to be a huge ambitious project, because I was not having so much work, and I was really focused into this one. But one of the options where I show it, and first time it was shown as a projection on the 7 videos of 7 screens. So there have been triples, 3 times different triples. This means 3 synchronized videos and 2 separated. And then, so this was just this flow, and the sound is just present. And then, which I was really glad, I was invited this year in May in Bologna to represent this work in the public garden, which of course is absolutely something else, just in typical arts venue. And they had also the theme for aquaponics there and similar. So I proposed to them to build this vertical aquariums where fish can fly, not fly, flow up.
It goes up, but it's flying, isn't it?
Fish doesn't fly, and I've never said that, so I know that. So it will not be misunderstood, but just in this vertical aquariums, you can see how fish is floating up and swimming up the aquariums and going up down again. And this was something which I was thinking it could be nice, and the sound we put on the headphones. So it's as a disco headphones, the systems which they are for silent discos also. So I think it worked really nicely and the photos of the videos, I have also photos next to the videos, which they're the same feel. So there have been 2 photographies, as you see on one of the photos, which they gave the space. There's this kind of huge water situation with these aquariums, and people could just listen to it. And because I was really thinking, shall I put the sound just out there, or just give to each his own individual situation? And it looked really good, and honestly I think it was also very well how the organizers in Bologna did navigate that. Plus, what was good thing was that everybody who was listening could really listen, and whoever wanted to talk there, they could, So it was more space between the thing, because sonic things in the open area can be hard to manage, I would say, navigate sometimes, you know what I mean? It's really hard to bring people to the focused listening. So this was one of the things which we did, and I was really happy. And this is the photo of me and the photographer Micha Godec, who spent lots of time with me in different parts of this river, because as I mentioned, it has 7 names. So this means that there are 7 different rivers and 5 caves. So we went on different excursions constantly around, and being actually lots in water and exploring together lots, So it was quite a trip, I would say. It's first time that I went more into this kind of way, because it's quite more poetic than some other works of mine. But on the other hand, I think it's also good to test different mediums and see. So with this work especially, I called it this shapeshifter, because it doesn't have only one way how to be represented. Because as you remember one work before, when I was talking about this piece Aurelia with the jellyfish and with the robot, that one is that, that one is done like this and is shown like that, and doesn't have lots of maneuvers, because it's just one artworks which when it's put like that together, it has its own charisma and it's there. And with this work, I saw that I can play around with different mediums and different way how to convey the same message, but in different variations. So, and it's always, I have to say, it can be challenging because, you know, of course, somebody who invites me, either I propose to them how to show it. You know, sometimes it's also shown only as a one-channel video with a photo tapette behind it or something. Or sometimes when we have possibilities, like with these guys in Resilience Festival in Kilowatt in Bologna, was also great to explore these other options even, you know.
Interesting. The voices you heard in the video, were they just from people walking by, or how did they get in?
So the voices are actually recordings of the narrator, and also I asked for collaboration, 2 singers. One is professional singer from Ireland, which I work a lot with her, and another is like one child, which I know and is also doing amazing singing. So, and as I mentioned before with Moises, the programmer who was working with me on the Moises Horta Valenzuela, to say it correctly, the programmer for AI who was working with me on developing this kind of sonic environment, we really looked into how to represent the river without like being too suggestive, you know, because, you know, with narration, you always have some linear, you always have story which is present, but still to have this kind of presence of humans. And I like how you ask the question, you know, is this people which they walk by? Because this is something which we really wanted to achieve, to have this feeling of being in the water and being somebody who is there kind of lying and seeing the world from this perspective and also hearing it from that perspective. So, and he was using some different AI, like machine learning systems, how to clone the sound of the human into the sound of the birds, or, you know, because I did recordings of the birds, I did recordings of the water. So there is multi-layered sound, and partly is this machine learning cloning of it, and partly is like real field recording. So it has this kind of vibe.
But this brings me to my next point, actually. Other questions, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe because you mentioned that this work you're currently showing on the slide is more poetic than others. I think all of your work I think is quite poetic in being somewhat in that sweet spot that while you're dealing with very serious topics in the first place, you still are kind of easy on the audience. Like you give them an easy access by using certain aesthetics or certain materialities or certain embodiments. Like, how do you manage to, in all your work, like find this sweet spot where it's, although it's serious issues you address, it's still playful, approachable, like kind of easy for the audience? How do you manage to get there?
Now, thank you for your kind opinion on that, because yeah, lots of labor, I would say. But it's just like, you know, I really try to find a way how to, when I speak about art science, I really try always to not just be science communicator. This is like one of the things which, you know, for me, always when I'm collaborations, when I see that people think that I will do something like that, especially from the science or engineering point of view, I always try to be really sure that we will not do that, especially not in this piece. We can, but it can be, it's another page, I can always say, you know, to do something like that. But it's like this, I always do like in-depth research on the topics. I really try to understand as much as possible, because, you know, when I explain the work or when I put it together, for me, it's important to understand all this, maybe for somebody crazy details, but for me, it gives me possibility to build up the stories. And I think also it's important that audience can enter, but then they can also go deeper with me, you know? It's like some people, maybe they will just pass by, they will have like 30 seconds with the work, but you know, some other people will actually go into the topic, they will actually go to read up stuff later. And with some of the works, I also try to, like, I will go with some links back, sorry to jump, but you know, like with this work, which I mentioned before, which is like one of the new works which I did this summer with a team of Institute, and it was part of Starts for Water project. There was like in-depth research in the laboratory, there was lots of field trips, there was like lots of experimentations, but on the other hand, I really tried to also convey some messages out of it. So the results of the lab, what you see here, this is like different variations of being deformation, the sea urchins larvae being deformed with chemicals which they're polluting on daily basis. But then, because I wanted to do this poetic way out, wait, sorry, I'm jumping up and down, but just to show videos. So then this was resulting then instead of this glasses where you see the as worked with one glass blower, for which I prepared the ceramic variations of this creatures, and then she did the glass blowing of it, because, you know, in the 19th century anyway, they have been doing lots of this kind of glass animals and glass creatures to represent the biology, and I sometimes also in my way how to convey the message, how to narrate the story, I go also sometimes back in time or, you know, project into the future. But I know that the topics which I'm dealing with can be really dark, you know, they can be really exhausting, you know, they can be really bringing lots of eco-anxiety into me, my collaborators, and everybody who I talk about it, because, you know, the time situation, what is happening with the planet and so on is not in the best conditions, to say the least. There is lots of people which they would like to see changes. They are working toward the changes actively, but you know, it can be very complex also sometimes, the topic, you know, so to shrink it, sorry, long answer for yeah.
Which brings me to my question. So your objective, or your core objective is, you're an artist, you do art-based research, you communicate data sets, basically, you communicate realities in the water. What is your personal objective when you do those videos, when you do those installations? Is it more the scientific approach? Is it more the educational approach? Or is it more the artistic and haptical or decorative? Or it's like what is your personal focus? What do you want? What is your mission if you do works like this? Because I mean, they take a lot out of you, and I can see when you talk, you're emotional about it.
Well, it's like it's all of this what you said in different variations and different it is what it is, and it's like that, you know. It's like honestly, for me, I love to do field trips and love to do field work, you know. I love to be actually in the specific places or spaces and just like be there, work in situ, work in labs and stuff like that. I was always obsessed and very, very strongly driven to this kind of aquatic environment. So I was really glad when I started to merge both things which I was working on, because I'm trained as a sculptor. I was studying arts and then, you know, but I was at the same time quite interested also in the marine biology especially, and I was always a bit like in between of these fields, you know. So I'm happy to have to say that, you know, in decade working in this kind of things, that I managed to do my profession out of that, you know. And for me, it's always benefit, you know, I need both of it that it works, you know. For me, it's just the way how I managed to do my practice is, yeah, I do education, but mostly I try to do lots of education. I do lots of master classes in different universities, and there my focus is ecology. And for that, I kind of developed something which is called empathic strategy, or methodology of like entering in these kind of things. And this is, I think, also something which you can see in my works, you know, or at least I hope that public can perceive that, you know, because the one thing which I try to avoid in my work is to say to the public how they should behave or how they should perceive my artwork, you know. I put it out there, and it's there either through the performance, either through the immersive installation or video and so on. And then I see how people are reacting, you know, and with some works, we managed to be more connected, with some less, you know, and it's also, yeah, I try to work between this balance, and yeah. Sometimes this works more, it's, you know, it's also, we have different perception of what we try to perceive and get to it, I think.
So I think we're slowly coming to an end. So I would like to finish with one last question, and unless you two have more questions. The question I have is, like, whenever you talk about, especially, I mean, when you talk about the world, the situation, climate change, the extinction of all the species, and the list is really way too long to be comfortable. And then you talk, and you focus on rivers and I assume your first focus was probably the Mediterranean Sea, wasn't it? I assume, or
Yes,
did you? Yeah.
yeah.
And I know already in the 80s, like, you had this humongous plagues in the Mediterranean Sea. And so from your point of view, like, what can really be done? Because ever since I can remember, all the things you've been saying, yes, we all know that, but we all keep on ignoring them. And how do you see that shift? Because all I see is more and more sea mammals are trying to escape the water and killing themselves, and more fauna is extincting. So what is your take? Is there any positive upside?
Well, yeah, it's complex.
Sorry.
It's something which we have to talk about, you know, like, especially my workshop, as I mentioned before, we go there, you know. And it's not easy because, you know, as individuals, sometimes we don't feel that we have lots of powers to change, because, you know, most of the pollution is actually still coming from big industry, you know, big pharma, big, you know, the agriculture, so on. So the changes, yes, they could be done. And like, for instance, the noise pollution, I call this one of the most stupid pollution ever, because, you know, just like with the shape how the boats are done, or if they are going slower, the sound is already less present and less strong, you know. Or they are doing some shifting now to this, for the smaller boats at least, to have electric motors, because the big boats, they can still not run on that because they're not strong enough. So, and what I'm aware of also is, like, the changes, if they are done qualitatively and good, and that not lots of people will lose their jobs, they have to be also done cleverly. One of the things which we worked this summer really hard was also what I mentioned before, this work which we look now here. It's part of this Starts for Water residency, which I had in city of Dubrovnik in Croatia, which I think, you know, it's like one of the most touristically interesting spots of Adriatic Sea, next to Venice, of course. And the city is actually actively thinking, and also what I noticed when we organize the workshops there with the locals, you know, like workshops, like debates or stuff like that. People, we are aware, as you said, Rudiger, you know, we are all aware of this, you know, but also the solutions could be done if they could be also sometimes bottom up, but also sometimes top down, in the sense like with the city, we spoke a lot about how to change just all the detergents in the city and everything what tourists are using on a daily basis. And with that already the coastal line could change, you know, and there are some predictions and there is some possibilities, but it's like this. I have days that I'm more optimistic about the things and changes, and I have days where I'm really not, you know, and I'm just like saying, okay, I feel more as an observer and commentator of the current situation, and I'm afraid of where we are going, but on the other hand, I'm also excited because I see that there's some changes happening, you know. So there is like some cities which they are like trying to go into this kind of like green city, and how the community which is working, living and being there can also navigate that, because on the end of the day we are part of the same economy, but just like the way how we can approach it differently can give the changes in the aquatic environments, especially Mediterranean / Adriatic, and especially the Adriatic Sea is one of the most problematic ones, next to the Baltic, of course, you know, like because of the tourism, because of its geographical kind of position, you know. But I think that, yeah, with change, okay, just to finish up, because it's something which I cannot just like answer with yes or no, because it's a complex topic, and I would like to hear also you guys what you think about that, because, you know, it takes forever to talk about this. But on the end of the day, I think it's important to be aware that, you know, like it can be done with clever and good kind of engagement in the communities, also in the local communities which they are living by the coastal, and or the rivers or the places like this, you know. Also with the project which I mentioned before about the pharmaceuticals, you know, with Gino, when we have been working on that, we both say we still use the different you know, like this aspirin and stuff like this, you know, because we're all used to it, but it's just like the way how we started to think about it and how these kind of big industries could change this kind of stuff. It would be good because there is, everything is out there, you know, there is so much research done on everything, you know, there is whatever topic of pollution you're interested in, you can find some research done, and there is always some ways showing how to climb out of that. But yeah, it's a complex thing. I would finish up. Not optimistic, not pessimistic, I don't know. Depends on the day, I would say.
Yes, let's leave it at that. I think it's quite challenging. And then the question, like my point of view, is it's like this. Yeah, it's a difficult topic, and like I'm not that long around, and it's been like repeating. So, however, I would like to thank you very much for being with us. And yeah, and I hope to meet you in person soon.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Nice afternoon, a nice day.
Thank you. And I mentioned before the Jeanette, I'm going now to see the opening of Eric Berger at your friends at Urush Weber's and Tjasha's exhibition space of Atoll.
Have them my best regards. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.